Over the top, a phrase, when spoken, prompted near endless death, destruction, and killing. Soldiers would climb out of trenches and charge into a hail of machine gun and artillery fire. Most wouldn't even make it to the enemy trenches. They would suffer a violent and chilling death. Their calls for help will go unanswered as they sink deep into the battle-scarred earth, drowning on mud and water. Over the top. Welcome to the channel where we talk about military tactics, strategy, and doctrine. We apply them to some of the most hardcore, realistic, and authentic strategy games. I am Jozu. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Over the top. Before each major assault, artillery would suppress the enemy position. Hundreds of thousands of tons of munitions would fall from the sky, scarring the earth, destroying bunkers, barbed wire, and the enemies. Soldiers were often tasked with a perilous mission of crossing no man's land to cut the wires, or they would sever communications and cut barbed wire. This would create openings for their fellow brothers. When the wire was cut and the artillery had finished, the assault would begin. Over the top. As soldiers charged across no man's land, they came under heavy machine gun and artillery fire. Most of them wouldn't make it, while others would drown in the mud and the water. The tug of war of World War I needed to end. Soldiers were gaining inches at the cost of thousands of lives. The war was static in nature. Many mistakes were made, and more often than not, both sides would fail to press their advantage. This would give the enemy time to reinforce a position or to mount a counter-assault. Reinforcements would arrive right as machine guns and artillery began firing again. It was a bloody affair, and the generals knew that the faucet needed to be turned off. As heavy artillery lands in the enemy trenches, the explosions send shrapnel flying in all directions, penetrating sandbags, fortifications, and flesh. World War I was static. It was brought to a complete halt. Countless lives were lost through attrition. No man's land was a direct result of this type of war. Soldiers positioned in fortifications forward of strategic locations and cities. The earth is still scarred today from the hundreds and thousands of tons of artillery that was dropped and the miles of trenches that were dug. This was all about to change. The advent of planes, tanks, and maneuver tactics will change the face of this war. It will change the face of all wars to come. Tanks, supported with infantry, would pierce the enemy lines, forcing the opposing forces out of their fortified positions and into towns. There was never an easy day in World War One. Mortars would fall on friendly forces. The hail of machine gun fire would rain down on friendly forces. Blue on blue was constant. And even if you made it across no man's land, you then had to battle in 12-foot trenches filled with German soldiers, mud and water. All of that was going to change. The smell of fuel and the roar of tank engines. Infantry supported by these new mechanized beasts. The modern era of urban warfare is just now setting in. The defenders with the strategic and tactical advantage must now reposition themselves into more fortified locations. However, with each advancement in military technology, an opposing force will also make an advancement. They will counter your tanks with anti-tank munitions. They will counter your aircraft with anti-aircraft guns. You create new forms of armor, and the enemy creates new munitions to penetrate that armor. The static nature was gone. The battles will now rage in cities, and you must destroy a city in order to save it. Defenders with a tactical and strategic advantage will now build fortified bunkers. Troops must cross streets and kill tunnels in order to take these cities from the opposing force. Warfare has forever changed, and we must change and adopt new strategies and methods to overcome the opposing force.